will be brought to the board first, put on public display, and then after that period, assuming, everything goes well, then it will be formally adopted as part of our curriculum materials.
Is this part of the math budget?
Yeah, well, it will be part of, we budget for textbooks separately, but yes, yeah. Currently, the math department, does not, well, there is not, obviously, there's not a math book that fits this.
Right.
Mhm. And that'll be part of the next year's budget, yeah, since we'll be
Right.
purchasing for the 15-16 or 14-15 school year. Then the last item in the consent agenda is a 13-60. It's a contract for supplemental educational services. You may remember that we're required to set aside a certain portion of our Title I federal money to provide supplemental educational services to eligible students. And this company, Gateway Central for Education, recently became an approved provider. And we have parents that are interested in them as an SES provider for their students. And so we need action to approve that contract. So that's it in terms of consent agenda.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Tickner? Would any board member like to move an item from the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve minutes of the previous meeting, bills, payroll, and action items 13, 57, 58, 59, and 60 of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mrs. Marza?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Shadwell?
Yes. Moving on to our action considerations, we have two action considerations, non-personnel related, 1361 and 1362. Dr. Tickner, would you like to summarize it, please?
Sure. The first action item, the memorandum of understanding, which has to do with the compensation of retired teachers that are hired back on a part-time basis. And this is a memorandum of understanding with ALT, and it formalizes that if we have the need to hire back a retired teacher on a part-time basis, that teacher will be placed in the BA Step 0 lane of the salary schedule. And that nothing had been formalized on that before, and so that's the purpose of this memo. Now, obviously, TRS is not deducted from that amount on the salary schedule, but the appropriate taxes would be, deducted for that amount. So then this clarifies that should that occur, this is what we'll do. You may be aware that we do have one current retired teacher teaching Woods for us, a couple sections of Woods this year. And that teacher was placed at the BA Step 0 lane, and should he continue with this next year, they'll remain at that lane, step. The second thing, action item 1362, again, is approval of the 14-15 school calendar. So as I mentioned in my superintendent's report, this proposed calendar has spring break scheduled 1 week later than past practice in order to allow a full park testing window. So spring break is scheduled to begin on Friday, April 3rd. So it's the end of the day on Thursday, April 2nd. Friday, April 3rd happens to be Good Friday. So then all of the following week, April 6th through Monday, April 6th through Friday, April 10th, is spring break. School then is in session on Monday, April 13th. We have been in contact with 113A. Their spring break does align with ours for the very same reason that we do. We're in agreement that the first time we do this park assessment, we want to make sure we have the full testing window in order to do it. Another difference between the draft calendar that we shared with you last month and the proposed calendar that you're asked to consider is that the calendar we're proposing does have school on Pulaski Day. Now that's different. We haven't had school on Pulaski Day in the past. We're proposing that we have school on Pulaski Day for a few reasons. And just FYI, Pulaski Day is the first Monday in March. It provides us with one additional instructional day before all of the spring testing starts. It allows us to have the tentative last day of school in this calendar on Wednesday, May 20th, instead of Thursday, which gives us the potential to make up 2 snow days prior to, the Memorial Day break. Also, this aligns with 113A's calendar. They've previously had school on Pulaski Day, I think, for the last couple of years. So, you know, we always look at, are we interfering with somebody's long weekend plans, but we don't think that's the case. Now, the last thing that the proposed calendar has on it that's a little different, that you've not seen before, it has a disclaimer at the bottom, and it says that days currently designated as holidays may be used as makeup days if necessary. Now, I want you to know we would never enter into a decision like this lightly, and it would take extraordinary measures for this to happen in order to take a scheduled holiday and make it up. But for example, if we had 2 snow days in December and we had a lot of winter to go, we might possibly consider having school on Martin Luther King Day. You know, that's an example. We wouldn't do that without a lot of discussion, without, you know, obviously bringing the board along. But at least if this is on the calendar, people are aware that it's a possibility. And quite frankly, the 2 holidays we're really looking at would be Martin Luther King Day and President's Day, would be the 2 that we would be looking at. So it just gives us the flexibility that we don't have. Now, we are going to have to go through a formal waiver process, holiday waiver process to give us this flexibility, and we'll be bringing that to you. So you basically go through a process, you say to the state, we'd like the flexibility to have school on any of these holidays should it meet our needs. You don't have to designate which ones, but it'll give us that flexibility for the future. So that will be coming in yet this spring. So that's really all the comments I have on both of those action items, the memorandum of understanding regarding the placement of the retired teachers hired back part-time, and the school calendar.
Unless I gotta look at the Farmer's Almanac for next year.
I know. I know.
What, any questions, Dr. Tickner? Would someone like to make a motion to approve action item 13-61 to approve the MOU retired teacher compensation? Mr. Curtis? Mrs. Talley?
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Marzak?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Mr. Shackle?
Yes. Would someone like to make a motion to approve it? Action item 13-62 to approve the school calendar 2014-2015. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Marzak? Seconded. Mrs. Talley? Roll call.
Mrs. Marzak?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Shackle?
Yes. Move on to agenda item 12, which is our information items. Information item 13-17, your board book are students of the month. Information item 13-18 is also the Association of Lemont Teachers Report. And information 13-19 is Lemont High School District 210 hiring practices.
Oh. He's actually an information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roy, would you like to summarize what's going on with the ALT? Around school?
Sure, just very briefly. All kinds of good stuff going on. There's, as always, you have an information item in your board book. Just very briefly, Fort Language Club received over 300 separate donations from members of toiletries and things that went off to Central Asia, Democratic Republic of Congo, and other places that have been hit very hard by various sundry natural disasters. Aaron Hitchcock was the site coordinator for the Metropolitan Math Club Conference, which was held here at Lemont High School. Weather caused a couple of challenges that day, but they used every available space on the third and fourth floors. Anna DeVries, who's a current junior, had her poem, Hope, published in the January 2014 issue of Teen Inc., which I happen to have a copy of for each and every one of you, which I'll hand to you in a moment. Health students competed in a photojournal project. They took pictures that represented their physical, mental, and social health. And they were presented in a poster book or PowerPoint format. Some of those projects are hanging in the health classroom, if you want to take a look at those. Jenna Peterson participated in a bereavement camp, counselor training. Provided her with development of appropriate activities and counseling practices that she can use to support children in the grief process. And she then later presented that information to her child development students. Karen Allen received a $700 Target field trip grant and a $500 LEAP grant for lake education. We're going to use that money to plan field trips for the AP Environmental Science and field ecology. Ms. Andergreave, Studio Art 3 and 4 classes, create drawings and paintings as part of their Blueprint LHS initiative. This time around, it was the foreign language department that got to choose artwork that have permanently installed in their classrooms. We do that, they are hanging, you're more welcome to come by. They're getting closer and closer to their goal of having art in every room of this building. And January 29th, the Lemont High School Math League Invitational was hosted. This is the 34th year of this invite. We have over 700 students from 21 different schools. Lemont placed 5th. Very briefly, it's been mentioned, and thank you very much. Lemont High School Drama had a very good run this last weekend with their drama production, Seasons of Love. It was a little bit different because we put it all on stage, including the audience. After Saturday's sellout performance, the Lemont Alumni Association basically had an entire section off of it. They occupied the entire section, and immediately following the performance, they had an outing at Hunt Street Cantina. A number of businesses also placed ads into our playbill. Tried something a little bit different. It wasn't an exchange of money here. Give me money so I can put an ad in your playbill. It was more of a community service kind of thing. You support us, I support you. As in exchange for them putting a poster in their establishment, I asked if they wanted to put an ad or a coupon into our playbill at no charge to them. And we had 4 restaurants participate in that, 3 of which actually gave either a percentage discount or basically Dolce Vita offered a free glass of wine for dinner. Guitaro offered a 10% coupon. Front Street Cantina a 25% coupon. And Tap House just placed an ad in our playbill. Waiting to see if they get any response from those ads. That's might be something we do in the future. Like I said, it's not a fundraising thing for us. We want to support the community that supports us. And I'm sorry, one thing I did forget is the Firehouse Subs in the Grange, which is owned by parents of some former students of ours, and adults, had a coupon day on that Sunday following our production. And whoever brought in a coupon and ordered some of the sandwiches there, you will be getting a check for 50% of that. So that's a little bit of a fundraiser. And one last thing, since on the 15th of March coming up relatively soon, Lemont High School will be hosting the SSC Group Interpretation Contest Play Festival. There'll be 12 different schools, 16 different performances at this point. It's going to be an all-day Saturday affair. Feel free to stop on by, but we'll probably should look for you. And if I can add those up, that's the end of what I got. Thanks.
Great.
The posted note is.
Question.
Well, I just want to say I had an opportunity to see the play. It was fantastic. It was simply amazing. Loved the venue. It was so intimate, and the performance were great.
One other thing I would like to mention, another thing that was a little bit different, instead of myself and Mr. Lindley doing all the directing, each one of those vignettes that you saw was directed by another student.
Really?
We handed them the piece, handed them the student and the actors, and they put it all together. So it was fun. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Roy. Board committee reports, we all attended last week's finance committee meeting. Any other committees meeting?
If I could just remind the board, the curriculum committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 10th at 6:30. If you remember, that's going to be for a presentation by our world language department. We'll remind you of that. Also, your favorite, the policy committee, is scheduled to meet on April 10th at 6:30. We have a binder of policies to go through. So that'll be coming up as well, and we'll send reminders to you.
And just on our committees, I always appreciate it, and I want to thank the board publicly that, while these are supposed to be subcommittees of the board, generally for all these different committee meetings, we virtually have 100% attendance of all the board members. So, again, board members, thank you for your dedication and concern and consideration. New business. Boy, that's where you're going to be, because we want new business from now on, new business. Any new business this month? I don't think there is any, correct? Okay, let's
Can
move
I
on.
just
Sure.
ask a question about the hiring procedures? Is this, I see we're not approving it,
No.
it wouldn't be appropriate, but does it get, it's just procedures, not a policy that gets put in our policy guide? Or, so it can be tweaked, it can be changed, it can be whatever.
Right. And the reason why I included that is, we had some discussion, in the past about hiring procedures, and I have to thank Margaret Justinsky, our human resource coordinator, worked with me, and we put together, I think it's a pretty sound procedural document to help guide the hiring process.
Yeah, I especially like all the documentation that's attached, because that is a great way of keeping that on file, and if there's any questions that come up or something. I thought it was very good.
Thanks, Beth.
We'll move on to public comment. In accordance with board policy, we welcome comments from the public at this time, but ask that each individual keep his or her comments to 5 minutes or less. Additionally, please do not repeat or reiterate comments made by others about the same topic. We ask that any person who wishes to make a public comment, please begin by introducing yourself, spelling your name for the recording secretary, and giving your address.
We'll share.
Laura Regal, Lemont, Illinois. You may find this a little strange because I just passed out to you the meeting for tomorrow for 113A, their agenda. I brought to your attention several times, and there's a reason why I'm bringing up the agenda and showing it. Tonight's agenda for District 1, for District 210 is a total of 2 pages. Very vague, no idea how to even tell what you're discussing. When we go to 113A and we go to the Village of Lemont, I wasn't going to print out 200 and something pages because their agenda packet to the community and to the taxpayers that they represent is usually over 200 pages. This here is just 113A's detailed agenda. It's 25 pages in length, and it shows you on there also the attachments in blue that you can click on to see what they're discussing, what they're doing, the total dollar amounts of what they're approving, and when there's a vote made, they also vote on the total dollar amounts to tell you exactly what they're voting on, and that the public at the meeting has the ability to know the payroll amounts that they're approving as a board, the dollar amounts that are going through, and what's happening. Mr. Cardis, I take and thought you asked a very good question. If you go to the consent agenda, item E, their discipline report is the monthly discipline report, which is turned into the Illinois State Board of Education on a monthly basis. It shows you all the accounts of drugs, alcohol, serious bodily injury, dangerous weapons, and tobacco. That is turned into the State Board of Education. That is all available online. The high school has more software packages than the grade school district does, so I don't understand why, with all the software that I'm paying for as a taxpayer, currently that this board approved, why this board isn't taking and actually putting the information out there for transparency for the public and for the taxpayers to see. Because currently we can't even see what you're doing We have no ability to tell what you're doing by your agenda, and I've come to you on several occasions already requesting this information. Next is also when they go to closed session, if you look, they copied the state statutory law, and they check off for their closed sessions what they're going to closed session for. As you can see, the two-page agenda that you have doesn't really tell anybody any reason what you're really doing, unless you come to the meeting to hear it for yourself, and you can't even determine if you're gonna come to a meeting because you can't determine what's being discussed by this board currently in a very transparent fashion. I gave you this so that you can see what your other governmental bodies are currently doing in Lemont. They obviously are a lot more transparent than the high school, in my opinion. It's my belief, and other people that I've talked to in the community feel the same way. I would encourage you to correct this and be as transparent as the other governmental agencies are currently being in Lemont. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Riegel. Anybody else for public comment? Any other public comment this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 17, item number 17, our notice of communication. We have a January and February extra mile in our board book. Action item, or I'm sorry, not action item 18, but agenda item 18 is closed session items. There is a need to go into closed session tonight to discuss personnel negotiations and a student matter. Would someone like to make a motion for the board to go into closed session at this time? Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Roll call.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mrs. Driscoll? Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mrs. Marza?
Yes.
Mr. Shackle?
Yes. We'll take a comfort break.